We'll move along. So, did everybody go to the minutes?
Yes.
And I like the Breakfast Club. Did you name them that?
No, they were
No, they-
calling it.
They
They-
were?
They
Yeah, they
named
did.
themselves.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Okay, that was good.
So we don't have any adjustments to the
You don't.
grid.
Fantastic.
No public to comment. So Sarah, you have any comments?
I'm developing a comment about the consensus process that you use and the way in which you do it, but I'm not ready to share it. I thought that perhaps what I would do when I have it better formed in my head, I might write a letter to you. and
That's probably all
present
my
it.
fault. Just write it to me.
But it is appreciated that this select board chooses the consensus model. But working with that has some challenges that develop
Yeah.
over time.
Well, I think what we try to do is when we sense that the public would really like to know that everybody votes, then we do it. Or if there is a sense that not everybody's going to agree, then we would vote. That's kind of how I try to do it. But it does get maybe too casual, a little bit hard to follow sometimes, probably. So, just move right along down, I guess. About the road inventory, planning and policy. First thing, is that good?
That'll be fine. This was presented to so you have in your packet somewhat of a proposal, if I can call it that, came to me by Phil Hobby. So this stems from the roads inventory that we did, where I presented to the board last week. So I would defer to Phil to fire away.
Okay, great. Thank you. I hope everyone had a chance to take a look at the one-page document. What I'm hoping to do is to have us take the time to look at the existing policies which we have. We have a policy that the select board has on roads. We also have a chapter in the town plan that talks about the roads and in detail about transportation in Hartland. And combine all the information that we have along with a conversation with our citizens to really help us formulate what we want to do about the state of the roads in Hartland. And let me make sure I'm clear about this. I wish we could wave a magic wand and have top quality roads that are durable and safe for pedestrians, for cyclists, and for people driving. But I know the reality is that comes with an exorbitant cost. So the real challenge is to begin to create a definition of what we say are good roads and what level of maintenance and the cost of that maintenance and the timetable for that maintenance would be needed to achieve that. So I suggested in the write-up that we create a subgroup, and I would love to have a discussion on what your thinking is what that group should be. But I was suggesting 2 members of the board, 2 members of the planning commission, 2 citizens, and and Dave, and possibly representative at times as needed from the highway crew or road foreman. I discussed a number of things, that I would hope the group would cover. We can be fairly formal with the group and create a scope document as to what we'll actually be doing and bring it back to the board for approval. Obviously, with board members on the group, we'll have a chance to sort of keep close tabs on what the group is doing. I do want to restate that we have an awful lot of information already, both in the town plan and policy. And we know that VTrans, the Vermont local roads, they all offer a wealth of information about maintaining our roads, primarily the class 2 and 3 roads. I could speak in more detail, but that's just generally what I'm thinking. Say it again.
You've got notes.
Notes, okay. Does anyone want a copy?
Yes, thank you. I have it electronically.
Give one to Sarah behind
I know that in the first paragraph you mentioned involving citizens. And I just added that there's also significant differences of opinion by individuals as to these adequacies, talking about, what they think of the roads. And then I have a disagreement with you about the makeup of the committee. The roads are primarily responsibility of the selectmen.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that committee should have 3 select board members and only 1 person from the planning commission. That being necessary for the planning commission, because that will give us a direct connection to the regional planning commission where some of our good information may come from.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, meetings should be warned anyways, but it would have to be if we were the 3 of us on there.
Right, and that's why I chose 2. So
Yeah, but I think they have to be warned anyways.
Okay.
Yeah. So that, and then I need some explanation of what you mean by a couple of these things here. The things that you have suggested the committee look at. And the first one, develop a project scope document at the start of the project to outline deliverables as well as projected timeline, I guess, present to the board. Present to the board for approval. So can you explain that a bit better?
Yeah, I think any group needs to have a charge and to be very clear about what they're going to look at and what they're not going to look at.
Okay.
And then throw in the time. I don't want to create a group that's going to sort of a year and a half from now come back with a report. But I'm not sure how quickly we can do this. Is it 2 months? Is it 6 months? But we need to, I think, get the group together, create the list of things that we are going to look at, and then from that, just sort of create a short document to say this is what we're going to be examining. I threw a lot of things into this short 1 page. There's a lot of, for example, we have available to us as a town the 2 consultants from not VTrans, but the Vermont local roads, Stu Johnson and Todd Eden, is it? We've used them before. I've heard presentations from them. that could be a good way of reviewing current best practices for what the state feels or should be going on with the roads. And then we can begin to sort of measure up and say, this is where we are along that line. So that's part of what I'm trying to do is to, there's an old adage in working in projects and you have to build a fence around what you're going to work on, otherwise you can wander into the backwater.
Okay.
And that's really what I'm trying to do in my first one.
Okay, the other one I have a question about is, right down here, the third from the bottom, says identify best practices and current practices creating a gap analysis. That's beyond me. What does that mean?
Okay, so that's part of what I was just trying to refer to a little bit is, as I started looking around on the way I've been looking at our own documents, we have both aspirations as well as this is what we're going to do. We spell out pretty clearly how we're going to manage trees. We talk about stone walls. So what I'd like to do is to say, okay, this is what we wrote. What are we actually doing?
Okay, I see.
For example, last summer we started cutting trees that were less than 6 inches along a certain road that I happen to know. And the policy basically says we shouldn't do that. We should leave saplings till they get mature. So that's a gap between what we wrote as the policy versus what we're doing.
Okay.
Actually, it talks about road maintenance. I'm
Yeah.
going to defer to.
Okay, I've got one other thing. And on the last one, it says highlight large-scale projects outside the scope of maintenance, and the example is a Cucci Road. And I don't know if we need any other examples or not, but I just know that all over town we have brook crossings. The culverts are way inadequate.
Yeah.
And these are projects that would cost millions to fit if we did the whole town.
Right.
I mean, it's a huge problem.
Right. And we have a policy that says we're going to do a culvert a year or a couple of culverts a year. What does that mean?
Yeah.
I'm not clear. And Gordon, we also know that we have the hydraulically connected brook study that's going to launch sometime this spring. And that has ramifications for us because that goes all the way up to a federal standard, trickling down to state, to the communities. So there's, and that's part of what I'm referring to there, is there's going to be some bigger things. We know we have an engineering study that was done, a year and a half ago or so on the Cucci Road. And that also has a price tag that has a decimal point way over.
Yeah, where you want it.
So again, what I'm really hoping for is that we can come out of this creating feedback for us as a board to basically say, okay, this is how we need to set up the budget to meet this, and do that in the most realistic fashion that we're ready to do. Because right now, I feel this is a way to review policy, to get us re-engaged with what's been done in the past, and to set us on a course that we're comfortable with and the town is very aware of.
Do you have any particular road or road segment that you're gonna, not the asphalt, but dirt, anything planned for the summer or to do other than regular maintenance? Or?
So we did that to an extent with Brothers Road. I'm not sure how, I mean, at the end of the day, other than the fact that at the very end, unfortunately, when we laid down some of that hard pack, the weather wasn't completely conducive, but, I mean, it worked, but then again, it didn't really work, because it tied us up considerably for, for a little bit. At the moment, what I'm thinking of is, we saw a fair amount of that yellow on that map, and it's for various number of reasons as to why it's yellow. At the moment, I am going to, what I've got in my head, and I think Bill's kind of running around at the moment, and hasn't been able to pull his thoughts together, is that we simply concentrate on laying down that additional hard pack that we've got budgeted for, continue to do that, continue to crown the roads, continue to basically do the basics, go back to, we've got a fair amount of plugged up culverts that we've got unplugged, or continue to work towards unplugging those culverts. And continue to utilize that grant and grants that are available and do some of the ditching and kind of peck away at that. And if we're successful in doing that, and plugging away at some of these basics, I think that we can, we can do what we do good. And I think that at some point we will take a look at utilizing those subcontracting dollars, for additional ditching or berm removal or something like that to kind of help us along. And I think that we'll look at kind of a mixture of things, as far as making our decisions and where we go with that. We did Brothers Road. At the moment, we don't have we did Brothers Road, and let's take a look at Draper Road next, or Advent. I will say, I think that we did have success doing that. I think that top part of, where Draper and Brothers comes together is much better, since we've spent some time over there. And the road coming down from Chippers there, but, again, I think that we learned the amount of time we spent with the ditching there and some of the other work. I think that would subcontract that out and concentrate on getting some of the product on the roads and unplugging the culverts and kind of take that back. That's kind of where I'm at this week. May change, but.
So what do you think of this proposal?
I think that the last part of what Phil said there, I think, is important to the board and to the town. I think that there needs to be, so where myself and Bill and the crew are kind of going is to, we know what's causing problems, so we're going towards, unraveling some of that as we go. I think that I feel as though, and let me put the strength of what Phil just said, I think it would be helpful to me that there was knowledge and support to the dollars that we put towards the roads, or that there is a consensus amongst us and even as much the town as to what we're trying to, where we're trying to go and what we're trying to accomplish. And I think that if there was I'm sitting here telling you the need to do Brownsville Road, I just wake up to it every day, and there's multiple, Ferry Road, North Hartland, there's just vast amounts of our 10 miles that need to be done. I think that there needs to be, if that were kind of laid out in a more formal process and a more formal understanding and what the dollars attached to that mean, and there was some sort of a roadmap, that I think that is kind of a critical component to the piece that I think I presented last week. There's generally, this is where, the planning part of this, I think, came in, Phil, is generally some of this capital planning kind of gets derived from the plan. It doesn't have to be, but is generally derived from the planning commission. Just a more macro, forward-thinking thought process that we're all a little bit more in tune with, I think is probably pretty beneficial.
Sure. An example is, I think, Clay Hill Road. Clay Hill Road is right at the threshold where the state says to pave it. The town plan is kind of a little quiet about that. It basically said, maybe we should make it a scenic road and not pave it and leave it dirt. But I think we can make some actions. We have to listen to what folks on Clay Hill Road think. And also, there's a paragraph or two in the town plan about it. So there's already been some thinking about that, and we can just review it.
I think that, I'm an anti-paver.
I understand that.
I just see the once you do it, you're stuck.
Right.
It's expensive project.
But again, it's just if someone were to read the town plan and look at that and sort of say, what are we doing about it?
Yeah.
So it's part of that.
I wonder if, listening to Dave here and you, I wonder if one of these points here ought to be, how do we decide where to head? We've got kind of two things. One is trying to get by day, keep our roads passable. The other thing is spend money and fix roads the way they ought to be fixed.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we balance those two?
Right.
That's a really big question.
Correct. And real appropriate to ask that as we enter into mud season and all the roads come apart.
I mean, basically we end up don't have time, don't have crew, don't have money, and we fix the things that just have to be fixed.
That's the trouble, is you're never going to get ahead if you
I
don't
know.
overbuild something.
I know it, absolutely. So I guess it comes down to spending some more money and sometimes you can. I know we got into about a bit of trouble a couple of years ago because we didn't grade Lover's Lane till way into the summer. I don't know. You remember, don't you, Matt?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And got a lot of complaints. What the heck are you doing? Blah, blah.
So let me just add a little bit, Matt, to what your question was and Gordon, where you just go. So let me just kind of clarify a little bit. And again, I think at least where we're at today, this is probably what we're capable of doing. So I think that part of this is, again, we've got 4 guys in Bill. So again, we've got 1 guy to do roadside mowing, possibly 2 guys to do ditches or culvert, unplugging culverts and kind of the general roadside maintenance. And then we've got 1 person to do the grading. And one of those guys is doing the culverts, potentially dropping some material for the grader. So that's kind of that's kind of the basics right there. And I think that that's what we do pretty well, or need to do pretty well. At least to stem us going backwards and to start to gain some going forward. Now, the game plan, again, we put the extra money in for subcontracting, and we've already been utilizing some of the subcontracting for the ditching. We utilized a lot of subcontracting to drop the material last year. I think that we would use more highway crew to move the material and use the subcontracting for the ditching and the berm removal. I think that the ditching and the berm removal and culvert replacement would be kind of subcontracting. We have the culvert inventory as it is, and I think that the inventory on the hydro-connected areas will be kind of telling as to some of the places we really need to concentrate on. But we've been moving, we did Webster Road we did Brothers Road, we did Webster Road last year. We've done parts of Hartland Hill, and we have done, we've got Mace Hill, parts of Mace Hill on tap for the spring. So we've already started to identify some of these places and to move forward in kind of a logical way. Unfortunately, I think in order to move forward, we need to resist some of that temptation to simply ping pong back and forth, which unfortunately is going to make some people a little bit annoyed. But I don't feel as though we really have a choice here other than to balance some of that. Obviously, there's some things that we just can't avoid and we need to react to. But we've been a little choosier in our reactions and concentrating a little bit more on the overall picture in order to try and move forward. And I think that that's part of this discussion here, Phil. But I think that there's a very large picture here that's very important as to, what is it going to take to get to, what would be determined at least the desirable maintenance methods and where we would like those roads to be, and what the ultimate cost is going to be, and what does that look like over 4, 5, 6 year stretch. Again, I started that this year, and I'm feeling some of the pain just in some of our discussions, even in my budget presentation, on some of the numbers I threw out, but that's just a beginning to start that process going. What are those true numbers? I'm guessing. I don't think we know those true numbers, and what that means and whether that's a desirable, number.
Right. Right. But I feel until we know some attitudes of what people want, and clearly make sure we understand those statements, because a week ago we had that really big thaw, and now I go down the road and I can avoid the rut that threw me sideways. The first night it froze, I just really got caught off guard, but that's the back road. So you don't want to ask someone right now what the state of the roads are after we're going through the spring thaw and mud, so on and so forth. But I do feel that until we can put our handle on, if town folks want the ideal, this is what the ideal costs. If they want middle of the road, this is what middle of the road costs. And if they want sort of status quo, this is a budget. Then I think we as a board can have a real conversation about the impact of the budget in the town and to staff, to subcontracting, and how do we implement it.
I think there are a couple of things to remember, and I agree with you. I like to keep the public very happy and do it the way they want it done. But I do believe statutes give us responsibility for the roads, even whether they like it or not.
I think I know what you mean by that, Gordon.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we're not going to move stone walls. We're not going to sort of move the stone wall that's by the cemetery. That's sort of like you can almost touch when you go by, and examples like that.
I was thinking actually the other way around, but that's an example too.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to just pass this around for people to look at, because it's just from the local roads. It's an ideal. I just don't think we have any roads that look like that in Hartland. Not many, anyways.
The one with all the ruts in it? Oh,
It
I
has some
think we
ruts.
do.
I'm talking about the width. I'm talking about the
I can
straightness.
tell you a few, actually. I got a few
I'm
phone
talking about
calls
how straight it
this
is and
morning.
how wide it is.
Way wide.
It's just a nice picture. And we just don't have many roads like that.
Gordon, something that sticks in my head, and this is kind of an aside story is some years ago when I was married, and my wife and I were pretty active in the sheep business. Barbara and Dick Ketchum came up from Dorset to buy a ram from us. They had come shopping once or twice, and they were coming back to actually pick it up now. And as you may remember, Dick Ketchum was the editor of Country Journal magazine, and I think we loaded the ram in their truck, and Barbara and my wife disappeared to go talk spinning wheels or something like that. And Dick said, "Don't you lose the canopy that you have on Draper Road coming in." He said, he lived in Dorset, and he spent every ounce of energy that he had to keep Dorset from becoming Manchester.
Oh, yeah.
And it was creeping and creeping and creeping. So I do appreciate that aesthetic value that we have with the roads. It's part of what makes Hartland special, makes Vermont special. And at the same time, we just have to be practical and make sure the roads are as safe as we can make them as well.
Well, I was thinking of an example, which actually, here again, the other way around. We spent a lot of money putting a new culvert in Pensmore Hill Road at the foot of the hill. Everybody knows about that. I don't remember what it cost. Do you?
The box culvert?
Yeah,
I think it was 120,000, wasn't it?
something like that. And if you follow that brook down to where it meets Jennyville Road, it goes through a stone culvert.
A 3-foot culvert.
Oh, jeez.
It's about this wide, about this high.
Oh.
Now, I can't think of anything worse than ripping out the work of our ancestors who did that with oxen and iron bars and everything else. And I don't know if there's an alternative way to keep the stone culvert and put in a new culvert, but that is a situation where you might have a lot of citizens who would want to keep that culvert. But really, that needs to be fixed. Because that flooded with Irene, and it'll flood the next time we have because it's no way, it's just not big enough. It cannot take the water from that watershed. So what does the selectman do? I mean, what do we do? What's the responsibility? What should be done? I mean, those are tough questions.
I agree. And I hope we can identify that as if we go forward with this idea, that we can actually identify some of those to some degree, almost it's like an emergency preparedness. We've seen the rain deluges kind of happen more frequently than before. And they've had an impact on our roads. So what does that mean? Can we do anything about that?
I have something to say. So I see this, your proposal as Dave's got one map of planning for the roads and road maintenance. And this is an overlay on top of it, and from a much higher view. But it should include plans to address the inadequately sized culverts, the hydrologically connected roads, brooks, and the emerald ash borer problem.
Okay. I would agree with everything but the EAB. I mean, if you would like, this group is informed and doesn't have a charge yet. And that's part of what I'm said. That's what we need to do. And there's an example of, what should this group look at, and what should it leave aside for now, even though we know the Conservation Commission did the survey, they projected how many ash trees would be in Hartland based on the survey that they did, and they came up with a cost. You know, I'm sure, Gordon, you up at the farm show, you saw the EAB exhibits as well. So it's very real, and UBM extension is certainly getting ready for it. But Mary, good point. The survey that Two Rivers is going to do with the hydraulically connected brooks, that would certainly be in here. I haven't found the culvert study that's been done, or the survey. Was that done by ourselves in the town, or was that done by?
Done by the planning commission at Two Rivers, on a
Okay.
chief regional commission, it's on. Yeah, let's leave it at that.
Because what you were talking about is what citizens want ideally, or middle of the road, literally, or, and figuratively, or the least costly plan. But that's what they want. The things we're talking about are really required. So when you look at requirements, there's not really much money left over for ideals.
I'd like to know, and maybe Dave can answer this. Do you know what we are required to do by the state?
Well, this hydrant,
Well, I mean,
that thing we have to do, that's gonna be expensive.
So, what you're required to do
No, it's good.
is the hydro-connected areas. And you also essentially, on paper anyways, you do have something to sign tonight, which is the road and bridge standards presented by the state of Vermont. Basically stating that you will maintain those standards. And they're kind of the basic standards. The ditching is in there, the culverts are in there. I think it talks about road cover and what you put on for cover, and some training for staff and stuff like that. But in return, you get better grant funding, much better grant funding and FEMA numbers. So that's technically, if you sign that, is what you should be maintaining. But then I think there are some general standards that are highly recommended to kind of maintain. Some of the tree growth on the sides of the roads, some of the canopy, amount of dense, I keep hearing about Densmore Road. There's multiple problems on Densmore Road, but if you go up from Jennyville towards Green Pot, that stretch along the river, the growth along that and the shade, it doesn't dry out until, or thaw out until June anyways. But, creates for icy, circumstances, and the ditching there and the berms don't help. But, those are, practices, as I was driving Densmore late last week, that, if, I were to pick Densmore Road to work on, this summer, thinning that growth out and, working on the berm or ditching, I think would help the winter maintenance quite a bit, let alone, some of the washouts or runoff that we have there. So that's not, that's not something that says that's what you have to do, if you want, if you want it to make difficult for the highway crew to continue to maintain a certain standard, leaving all that stuff in place, not taking care of those things, just adds to them, just doesn't make it very, to put it another way, to take care of those things would make it helpful, down the road to maintain, a better road.
So I think that's a great example of the quandary we're in.
Yeah.
A lot of that, Dave's answer was a soft response saying, we would like to do this, but we're not required to do this. And you were asking what we're required to do, I believe.
I think there's so much that we are required to do that in just general maintenance, and then this other type of maintenance we're gonna have to do, that asking people what their ideal is really kind of a hollow question, or maybe I don't want to say insincere, but really, would we be able to react to it?
Well,
Not really.
My reason for asking for what is the ideal is to put a price tag to it.
Okay, and say,
And
yeah,
say, great, okay, if you would like that, then your taxes are going to be
oh,
whatever that is.
okay.
Uh,
There's also the group out there that's into aesthetics, like your friend was picking up the sheep.
Yeah.
And they look at the road and they say, this is beautiful, these trees are great, I love to see the wall along the edge and so forth. Other people say, I want to get there in a hurry.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Whether I see the wall or not, I'm not looking at it.
Right.
So we got this kind of a conflict there, and I suppose we have to kind of strike a balance.
Yeah,
So,
no, I agree.
um,
And I'm sure we all know who drives really fast on our own section of the
Yeah.
roads that we live on, and who drives safely.
There's a policeman who drives very fast on my road.
Well, that's your road.
Isn't that interesting? And he's pulling over people in Weathersfield for
My
some
neighbor,
reason.
the state policeman, drives very conservative.
This is not a state policeman. Just an FYI. I think the canopy thing will become an issue of the past anyway, because those ash trees are going to come down.
yeah, that's just,
They haven't
They're going to come down.
but
calmed down, would you?
there's
They're
10 maples for every ash, don't worry about it.
All right. They are coming down, and we are going to have to pay for it.
We spend $1 million, $6 million doing it or not, they're going to come down.
I'll take all that for 6
Well, just this, we're getting way off topic, but
No, this is part of the plan that we need for the roads.
I'm sure we all saw the same press releases that Wisconsin said that they discovered that the winters were so brutal that the ash borer has been dying, and then Minnesota countered that and said, our winters are cold too, and the ash borer isn't dying. So.
Yeah. But there are states where the trees are dying.
I wanted to ask a question about this map. I think this is nice. Is there any way this could be done accurately and complete? With somebody actually looking at the roads?
They did drive the roads.
They did. And they didn't notice the Cucci Road is paved all the way.
Probably an oversight.
Okay, but some other things too. Okay.
I mean, I think it was generous enough that we got what we got out of them. That, we can say, yeah, it's paved all the way through, put the brackets on there, but I think that, I think for the quality, on Queechee Road that you're pointing to, there was one stretch that somewhat surprised me at the way it was rated, but for the most part, I think it's.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a difference between fall and spring, that's for sure. The road was moving a lot.
All right, so the way I see this is that we can say yes or no to this idea. And if we say yes, we need to fine tune this
Correct.
page.
Yeah. And also, I think as a group begin to identify who might be in the group.
Mm-hmm. And my idea there on the 3 selectmen could be all 5 of us. We wanted to.
Okay.
I really think the select board is the primary steward of the roads.
Yeah, but isn't that the point of this committee, is to get other people's perspective?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And they're not, we would be getting the report and making,
I know,
You know,
if
the vote,
we're
whatever.
involved in the committee, then we're going to get more what we want, and also we're going to gain a better understanding of what these people want. I understand my 3 3+.
You're saying you don't want to participate.
Yes.
That's
Why,
okay.
yes, I am saying that.
That's okay. That's okay.
I'm seeing 3 or 4 good candidates right here. Road. I think they're very unknowledgeable, but
And there's no reason why more
Yeah.
people can't attend if they are public meetings.
yeah.
Come.
Oh, if I have a burning desire, absolutely. But nothing to do, yes.
Um, I'm also curious if anyone knows of any, I have to be careful about this, but anyone with a road engineering background that lives in town that might be.
Yeah, that's one of my notes, says engineer.
Yeah, we have to be careful about that. 'Cause we don't
You're not going to get
want
anything done if you get an engineer involved.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good opinion.
Wait, why are you being careful?
Well, I think it's good that the person's going to volunteer their time.
And it's a professional person.
Yeah.
How about an ex-engineer?
Yes, how about somebody who's retired?
I don't know if we have one of
A
those.
retired road engineer.
I'm asking. I don't know.
But I mean, that would work, right? If the person was retired, not actively.
I think retired or not retired, if the person volunteers their time, that's all I'm asking.
I don't know if everybody remembers Cheryl Rivers.
Yeah.
Used to be a representative for Stockbridge or someplace. She was so fed up with the road engineers that she designed she came up with this wooden bridge idea that towns could use. That was like a fraction of the cost of a properly engineered bridge. She says, there's got to be an alternative. And there was a legislative initiative that she put through.
Did anybody use it?
I don't know. It was a perfectly good idea she had. Yeah.
So she designed this wooden.
Well, I don't know that she designed it. She was behind the project.
All right, how long are you envisioning this group will meet? What time period? You said not a year and a half. You said 6 months?
I would like to sort of, take 6 months at the most,
And meet how often?
to be determined. I mean, a lot of this is, focused on people we draw in. So I've gotten this far initially, and I was waiting for my colleagues' approval whether we're going to go forward or not before I just put any more effort into it. So it sounds like at this point we think.
I think
We
it's a
get
good,
one more
as
year.
long as your toes don't feel like they're being stepped on, Dave.
I think that it is easy for the groups and groups to try and get into the finer details of life, but I think that it's important that the board be privy, and again, I'm gonna come back to, the statement, the broad brush of comprehension of tasks that, where we need to head ultimately, and, what that, getting there from a monetary point of view. Again, I'll be honest with you, I feel kind of, I pitched the budget, we've got the, a 50% increase in the paving, but I feel like I'm kind of standing out on an island there, just kind of letting you guys know, where we're heading, and not sure there's complete consent, a complete understanding of the needs and where, the next step that may transpire after that. And I think that if the board was to wade into that bigger picture type stuff and understand that and understand What that may mean from a dollar perspective, then I think that is very good knowledge and very good understanding that the board should ultimately know and understand and get to know.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that if we got together in this group, sort of as is suggested here, that you and Bill would be kind of the professional persons, like on any committees that I've been on, there's usually somebody there who knows what they're talking about and kind of guides the group.
Mhm.
Like when you're in extension service groups and you get a bunch of farmers, and then you get one guy who's from the extension service, and the farmers just to kind of like, yeah, and they get led down the garden path.
Mhm.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think that as long as Dave and Bill or someone else is there to guide us, that we should have a good outcome.
Yeah, good.
Something like that.
Yeah. And Gordon, you have already, you and I just had a side conversation after the community breakfast that, I'm thinking that there may be multiple forums for community discussion. If we put out that we're going to talk about roads, I don't think this place would be flooded with people. Unless it was really a bad, snowy, icy day.
Roads are bad.
So,
I think that's a great idea.
but I think there's a lot of, the collective wisdom of ourselves. We can create how to best do some of these things. And I did talk to my neighbor and Peter Gregory, and he said that either he or Two Rivers would certainly offer a facilitator if we had a community sort of discussion. Okay. Well, thank you. Appreciate the feedback. Do we need to make a motion or anything?
I think so.
Okay.
You may want to just clarify some of the specifics as to where this group is and what the makeup is.
I think we do that. I think we're going to decide first, are we going to do it or not do it?
Okay,
And then we will,
perfect.
if we decide to do it, like I just said a few minutes ago, this we need to decide
Got it. Okay.
how to do it.
I don't want to make the motion since I wrote this.
No.
So it would be a road maintenance planning group rather than a committee. A committee, I think, is more long-standing and
I'm not a wordsmith.
Task force.
There we go.
thank you, Sarah. Road maintenance planning task force. I like the planning word.
Just task force.
All right. Task force. You want me to make this?
Sure.
All right. I make a motion that the select board create a road maintenance task force to,
Let's make it road maintenance and planning.
okay, and planning task force to explore all aspects of the roads in Hartland, from state standards to aesthetics.
Sure.
Say that last part again.
It's right in his, here. I'll underline it. The group will be made up.
Or maybe that's-
Okay. The group will follow a process with the outcome being a report that will reflect levels of maintenance with impact, cost, and time to achieve the various levels. The working group would consist of two
Yeah,
or
we don't need
three.
those.
That's to
You
be
don't need
determined.
We don't get all that into
Right, that's the detail level.
nothing we did.
Okay.
Step.
Just what you said first.
All right. Plus, then further words that are on there, like that whole paragraph.
Just to make her type more.
You seconding this?
I don't want to be in the paper going on.
Oh, he can't do that. Mark,
Sure, I'll
you-
second.
All right, thank you.
Any other discussion? Be good to go here.
Aye,
Everybody,
yes.
no one's against this? Okay, good. All right, so this is too much to finish off tonight.
Good.
We'll put this on the agenda for next week. Let's see,
After
no, not next meeting.
After town meeting.
Next meeting is the one right before town
Yeah,
meeting.
not next meeting, but the meeting after that. Put this on the agenda. And in the meantime, we could actually do some email back and forth about the details of this without violating any rules, I think. Just about these points of suggestions I'm talking about,
Okay.
no decisions, just suggestions of how this might be worded. What?
Am I gonna get thrown in jail?
No, as long as we don't,
Maybe on.
I don't think there's any harm in doing something like that.
Well, you'll find out.
Because we're gonna discuss the whole thing at the public meeting a month from now and make our decisions then. Okay. That's good. Took about more than 30 minutes. Okay, now we're down to town meeting review, preview. Town meeting preview.
15 minutes behind.
I know that, well, at least. Let's see that.
Town meeting preview, so budget and budget discussion is pretty well set. What we haven't talked about since November, I think, was there was a desire, I think, of the board to have an update on the Three Pointers intersection. I just wanted to make sure that we had that discussion and we were kind of on the same wavelength as to what we were going to discuss and, just kind of bring that up. And I think, Martha, you had mentioned that we should have one, and I think that we had mentioned right about the time that we decided to move forward that this would be a good topic to give an update on.
Under Article 10.
What did you say, Gordon?
Under Article 10, last, end of the meeting.
Actually, the moderator thought, and I concurred, that leading into the budget discussion, if, why we're kind of town topics that,
Be
because
about
the listers also have a discussion, and I think she felt as though that might fit in after Article 6 to kind of cover this stuff through. And then alleviate any kind of questions that may crop up, towards the end.
Okay.
I thought that I concurred with the boss that might be a good idea.
Okay, so that would be prior to the vote, and that would be Article 8, and prior to that.
Yep, so Article 8, I'm gonna need to give a budget presentation anyway, so we thought that leading into that would be the prime real estate.
I assume you don't have any information on the new engineering as far as but it might be good to know when we will have that.
I agree that, that's one of the things we're going to give an update on, is that we're taking the time to explore the feasibility of burying utility lines, and that and we're asking for the utility companies to come together with the engineer to create a document that's going to tell us how much and how it would be done, and then we would have something to vote on at that point. And do we need to talk about the bond aspect of this as opposed to?
Yeah, because I guess what we need to tell everyone is that we are planning to have a special meeting in the summertime. I don't know if we have any timeline on when that might happen. But maybe that's another thing we could try to, maybe conversation with the engineer would give us some idea when we might be able to have a meeting.
So the only, this is kind of my update process, but we haven't attempted to get the group together yet. So I think the timeline depends on when this group can meet and in a timely manner, and the results that we get out of that.
Gordon, I thought we had decided not to have a special meeting in the summer because of people away on vacation.
Oh, maybe we did. I don't know.
Did anybody else remember that?
I just remember talking about lots of different options. I'm not sure if we finalized.
Yeah. Well, it could be that we should wait until September. But what I do know is that the years go by.
Yeah, yes, it's true, but I want everybody to feel that they've had an opportunity. Or if it could be in June before school lets out.
And see us moving that.
Yeah.
So I'll get into more of where we're at the moment with the town manager update, but so if I'm up and when it's on the overhead, do you want me to do the presentation as to where we're at and some of the details of what we've been doing the last year up to this point, which is particularly the details on Matt Dunn's property in that place there, along with BG's and the easement process, of which we're still in actually, along with the decision to move forward and cultivate the utilities and to harden the estimates that we have now. Giving a kind of I don't have a definitive timeline like, yeah, this is going to be, May 5th. Where a special meeting is going to be in May or in September at this point in time, other than what the goal is.
Can you clarify what you meant by special meeting? Are you talking about the town, or?
So the town will need to have a bond vote,
Right.
which needs to be essentially a special meeting, or if it took Y amount of time, a year, then it could fit with the town meeting for next spring.
Yeah.
But the bond vote, you need to have an actual Australian ballot
Okay.
vote of the town with an informational meeting to go along with the Australian ballot.
Okay.
So
I
that needs to occur.
we had a bunch of meetings that we were talking about there, and I just want to clarify
Yep.
which one you were.
Does that mean, David, we'd have to have 2 days? One day for the meeting and then the day for the voting?
They need to be separate days, correct?
Yeah.
The informational meeting, you need, I think there's 2 of them, one of which can be no greater than 10 days from the actual vote. Needs to be within the 10 day period.
But it could be the day before too.
I think I'd have to look at the statute.
I know we used to do a school
Seems to-
meeting the night before the town meeting voting. So I think it can, I think it can be done.
I'm sure just after the recent experience that I had, that there'll be pushback on the cost of doing the engineering study, of getting the cost to get the cost of doing the utilities. So we know what we roughly know what that is at this point, and you know, if asked, we can answer that question, I guess.
So the answer is fairly simple. You're asking to borrow a sum of money for a project. If you don't know how much the project is going to cost,
Right.
You don't necessarily know the borrowing amount, and the bond bank will want to know that answer as well.
Right.
So we have a ballpark figure of all of which, you know, there's several things that are already left out of that figure.
Mhm.
So you want to ensure yourself that you're borrowing enough so that we don't have to go through this process again. You know, so it's, you know, obviously it's a little bit more polite way to put that, but, you know, and again, we talked about this at a select board meeting, you know, there's kind of two things going on here. You know, we've chosen to go to the voters with a project and ask for money to borrow the money. We've decided that we want to go for essentially a bond vote.
Mhm.
So when you're gonna go to a project for a bond vote, then it's important that you put yourself in the ballpark, you know, and even maybe a couple $100,000 more than what you feel you may need, simply because you can put that money back towards to pay down what you borrow.
Okay.
If you come up short, then you run into some extreme difficulties. And, you know, the recommendation from me to the board and why we may have taken this step would be to ensure that we haven't fallen short.
Mhm.
So to spend the $10,000 to ensure that you've got the details necessary to borrow the proper amount, I think is a fairly critical step. You know, if you just simply want to know whether you want to move forward or not with the project, then, you know, it's kind of a different story. But
Mhm.
we're going to, you know, we've taken that step that we want to essentially go with a project, you know, so we're essentially, when we have that special meeting, we'd be essentially saying, look, here's a project we want to perform. This is the, you know, fairly detailed project and what the cost is going to be. What we came to the board with would be a number that was good enough to make a decision whether you would want to proceed with a bond vote or, you know, not. You know, we've seemed to want to proceed with a bond vote type vote, which I think entails a little extra scrutiny than just, you know, what we presented to the board.
I got a quick question, I don't want a long answer. Are we gonna put it out to bid and then go ahead with voter approval, or are we gonna get our financing on an estimate?
Get your financing first.
Is there any, I know some towns do it that way though, with voter approval, don't they? Or-
Put it out to bid first.
Yeah.
The process is fairly lengthy to get the bond approval, you know, and then to submit the application, and the bond, you know, sale only happens twice a year. So that would be a pretty significant or potential significant amount of time between it goes out to bid
And the start time.
and the sale. And then if the bond vote fails, you know, the person that bid on it's gonna be like,
Big waste of their time.
hey, you know, I mean, you put this out, you didn't even have approval.
Yeah, and we make people, and we do get the bids. Some questions.
So the other update that I don't know whether we should just wait to the manager's report, but the Route 12 property.
So I would maybe think about slipping some other things in with this update. I think the 21 house would be appropriate.
Okay.
You're talking about during the town meeting.
Yeah, I think after the Three Corners intersection, that a 21 house update would be probably sufficient. I think there'll probably be some questions at the end anyways. So might as well have that on. And maybe some smaller things that just are things going on in town, or
Has our realtor discussed dropping the price?
talked to them today, actually. We talked about going into the springtime, looking at lowering the price.
So we talked about it, or it's gonna happen?
What would you like to have?
I want it lowered. You?
I'd like the house to be sold.
Yeah. It does, it requires a lot of work. Who's gonna buy it unless it's a good price? Because they are gonna have to put a lot of work in it, and they don't wanna overprice, they don't wanna put so much into it that they're above what they could get out of it in that location and everything, you know? It's just common sense.
Do you know whether he's been advertising it as possibly a site for a home industry of some sort? Because it might have a commercial value too. Something small I'm talking about.
I can't answer that specific question.
Well, even for that, whatever, it needs a lot of work. And it's too high. Nobody wants to buy it at that price. Knowing how much work.
I know, but if
You need the right person, is what you need.
Or
'Cause
the
really,
price, yeah.
That lot is worth easily the half the value of that house.
I understand trying to sell it. I don't think it's overpriced myself. But I was thinking on the commercial side of things, there's those two nice garages that are built in front, which somebody's gonna park their car. That's not worth much to anybody, a place to park a car. But if it was a bakery or something like that, somebody did a home industry there, then it would be, the garage would become much more valuable to people who own the property. And if they had a plan, I just don't thought about that at all.
We've had that property a long time.
It's been on the market for 10 months.
If it wasn't a town, if it was you, any of us here, and we had moved out of town, we wanted to unload that house, we would have dropped that price. We wouldn't have carried it all winter, that's for sure.
Yeah, but if we still lived in town,
It's a savings account, Mary. That's the way I look at it. We're gonna get the money back.
No, we're not.
Well, we're not in the rears yet. I mean, we're not gonna take 100,000 for it.
No, but we're not
So,
gonna get the money back that we paid for it and put into it.
We can afford to hold on to it a little bit longer before we.
if you
Tell
weren't the
everybody.
person you're talking about, somebody moving out of town, just wants to get out of here and get it. Think about it as the person still living in town, maybe nearby, has enough money, can afford to own it. They're not going to be nearly in a rush, as in a rush, is what they describe. So, that's my.
Let's talk about it again when we mow the lawn.
Oh my God. Months from now.
So I do think an update on the fact that it's for sale is being seen. People are going through it at this point in time, so the price is enough that people go through it. I'm not sure it's the right clientele at the end of the day. It may very well need to be a builder type that would offer, knowing that there's a ceiling as to what he can put into it and sell it for, but at the moment, it is being looked at.
I can't think of any other items, big items that we should give a report on.
Yeah, town meeting's pretty simple this year, as far as nothing.
About the Emerald Dashboard.
I was wondering if Dan might attend if you wanted to talk about the cemetery.
Oh,
committee
that would be
meeting, but
good. Yeah.
I don't know what if Dan would be around or not.
Oh, yeah, because he works out of town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would need to know, I can send you Dan an email. I would need to know for sure, and then I would need to let Pat know that we've got something else to fit in here.
But there's also a report in the town report, right?
There is.
Oh, is there?
It should be.
Yeah, I think you guys submitted one. If not, it certainly can be mentioned and highlighted, and the fact that it's been set up and
That could be at the very end of the meeting.
That could be what did you say?
At the very end of the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Conservation Commission has their award that they're giving out. So that's their update. I think everything else is in the written report.
Okay. All right, so move along. Next thing is a budget update.
because you guys look like you're getting a little stale.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dave.
Excuse.
Moldy too?
Well, no, I said stale is a bad word. You start to doze, you start to fall a little bit to the left. Mark will get
Oh, good. Oh, exciting. A new face.
Awesome.
New face.
You got 2 minutes, Martin.
That sounds good. Good news, yeah.
We have 10 minutes, Mark.
Alright, I think I can stay under that timeline. The general fund obviously is in the 7th month, the 12th, so we're at 58%, because it's July 1st to June 30th.
Yeah.
So we're through the end of January.
Can I ask you a question before you?
Sure.
I always get confused about this last column.
Month to date, is that what that stands
Yeah.
for?
It's the month to date.
Yes.
It's just what has transpired this month. You want the
Okay.
one right to the left of that.
Okay,
It's for the year.
all right.
Budget, we're at about 65%, and we should be roughly 58%. But the reason is, our legal expenses are up for the year. The library repairs, we've used almost all the money, so obviously that brings the percentage up. That'll catch up as time goes if there's not many more big expenses. The town garage heat and repairs are almost at their max. Again, we're ahead, so they'll slowly catch up. The 21 house, we had to put a pump in and we checked the septic, so that's up almost at its max that we voted in for the budget. Capital improvements between the activity center, going over with the painting, and part of it we put in the capital improvements so we can depreciate it over some time to help out. But the listers are below their budget at this point, so that's kind of helping us stay kind of sort of where we're at. Obviously, they're going to use the time as time gets closer to the crunch time for them, so but at this point, it's kind of helping us work on. Overall, we're probably close to $40,000 over budget for a worst case scenario. It may change, but our workers' comp and our liability insurance is paid for the year. So that's part of the expense. So as we go along with the months, obviously, that'll help bring that percentage down. So that's also driving the cost up.
But it'll still be 40,000.
No.
It could be. It could be 40,000, yes. Worst case scenario, it could be 40,000. But that's why the part of the percentage is up, because we paid all
Yes, I understand
fees
that.
up front,
Yeah.
so unfortunately. The highway department also is looking over budget at this point, about 40,000, but the hard pack, we spent 7,000 more than we budgeted, but I don't think we're gonna have to buy any more, maybe just a little bit before our new budget year, so the hard pack should be pretty well set for the year. Subcontracting, we spent $19,000, but we have a grant for $6,000. So that's gonna be a revenue, that's showing the revenue side, so it'll be a little different. But that'll help offset some of the subcontracting that we did in this past year. And payroll's over by $11,000 at this point. But as you know, Greg has left us, Dan has left us. We hired Zach, so Zach's gonna get paid less than what Dan was getting paid. So that should help bring some of the payroll costs down. We have hired John Dumas on a part-time basis as we need him. It's worked out well so far, but even with his costs and Zach's bringing it down, I feel the payroll should slowly come right into where it should be by the end of it.
What does John Dennis do?
He's been snow blowing, shoveling, driving the sidewalk clearer, breaking the sidewalk clearer. So he's been right at it.
Does that sand? You were gonna ask that, Gordon.
It's salts.
Salts, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, they're on salt floor.
Doesn't say in
I don't know that answer.
Put it in there, but
Yeah,
so it could. But it wouldn't hold much, and how would it get refilled?
Same with salt.
does.
Gonna drive back, fill it, come
All the
back.
way back to the garage?
Well,
Couldn't bring it, I mean, it's a tiny little thing. Put a truck down and shovel it in with a hand spade? But that isn't off the wall, is it?
I don't know how, I've never watched
He's
that.
got the one son as well, but generally have this one out for the other folks are out. He's a one. I don't think he goes all the way back. It's very small.
Okay.
So that's pretty much where we're at this point in time in the budget for the year.
so, again, why is it the labor cost 11,000 over? You say that, labor?
Yeah, we had Greg in here also for the winter months. And we had him last year for the first time to help out,
Mm-hmm.
so it's just,
We hadn't budgeted for him, is that?
I'm not sure about that yet, sir.
So let me just clarify a couple things here. So back in the fall, and I gave you a handout. When we went and we did the hard pack and the trucking, and brought Greg on, there was a feeling that we would go about $30,000 over, and that would come out of the surplus of the highway fund.
Yeah.
So presently, we have utilized, again, some of the numbers that Martin brought up, 19,000 in the subcontracting.
Mm-hmm.
Although 6 of that is going to be offset by a grant. I do expect another $6,000 worth to be done with the subcontracting. Again, about $6,000 offset by the grant for ditching work that we did on Webster and we plan on doing on Maze Hill. So that technically is about $13,000. Then we have about $7,000 in hard pack. I do expect to bring a little bit more in though, Martin, truthfully, depending on how the spring goes. And then the 11,000, we did not have Greg originally budgeted for in the this.
Okay.
But cumulatively, that would have put us at about 30 to 35, kind of rough, give or take there. But I expect that 11,000 to come down. That gap is going to close. I think, if the budget were to end today, we'd be 11 over.
Mm-hmm.
Greg, we had anticipated Greg working another 6 weeks. That position essentially is being filled by John Dumas, who is independent contractor at this point. He comes in the day of the storm, the day after or the hours after, and then he's gone, so he's not here the full week. Plus Dan, Zach is at a rate considerably lower than what Dan was at, so that 11 grand is going to shrink as we progress here to May. So I'm still projecting us to be around 30, to be conservative, I would say maybe 35 over from that will be taken up by the surplus, highway surplus. I'll just pass this to you, Mary. I brought one copy just to kind of refresh your memory. least I thought I had it, on the, I might have to get it out of the meeting, but what we've got for surplus and why I felt as though we could afford the 30,000 to be taken from the surplus. Essentially brings us down to just over 200,000 that we would still have remaining in highway surplus. Down from, I think we're at 235 at the moment for a surplus, 238 somewhere in there.
Okay.
And that is, I think that a couple of these storms, getting a little off topic here, but I think it is painfully obvious this winter for the highway crew to come back and do all of the parking lots, including for the Hartland Winter Trails, North Hartland School, Activity Center, to do the sidewalks and to do around the library, around this building, around the rec center, does take a fair amount of time. Even if it's cleanup after the fact, takes away from, maybe sanding time or just, downtime. So I am glad that we had Greg when we did, and I am enthusiastic by the mere prospect that we have John on the independent contractor basis just to pick that up off of their plates and allow them to just continue with the roads themselves.
He does an awesome job.
Oh, that's great.
I saw him out here, he did town hall last week, and it was, I got here about 7:30 like usual, and he'd already snowblowed, and he was showing off the path over here, and oh yeah, it was just nice to see that.
That's really
Yeah.
nice.
So,
I mean, there's an issue with the front walk over at the library, and, we get calls on that, and we gotta pull somebody, have them go over and, take a look at it. And, it's ultimately, it's kind of a design flaw, but, well,
Is that warranty?
it has sunk.
That just went in, didn't it?
I don't think so. I think it's been there since,
That's
What are you talking about?
The
The
door
house.
at the library?
No, the sidewalk.
no, the front walk.
Oh, I thought you said lock.
The
Oh,
drainage, the way that the drainage comes down.
Oh, okay,
It's
okay.
just kind of a problematic
yeah.
issue. We've kind of got something bypassing it at the moment, but, anyway.
Dave, a non-budget item. You said the town had did the plowing for the area where the tiki torch was. I believe it was a joint volunteer effort in the town, but thank you to the town. That event was very successful this year. They had more people than ever, and a lot of folks, majority of the folks I talked to were all from Hartland, kind of coming out with their families for a winter's night. So thank you for whatever plowing you guys did do.
I know the branch manager, Cody came, him and his girlfriend came also. They're from Bradford.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's nice.
Yeah.
So why do we plow out the North Hartland School you mentioned?
Fire.
Fires. There was
Someone
something
might
we
wanna
still
do
need to
that.
get in there. I can't find my surplus.
You know what, Dave? I am going to trust you on this.
What's that?
I'm going to trust you on this.
All right.
Once a year. That's it. You just used that once a year.
I'll throw it.
So
Yes.
I'm gonna go off topic just a little
Yeah.
bit, but it's also in the town manager update, but also a budgetary discussion. And it was in my update on 180 delinquent people
Oh, yeah.
for $500,000. So just to give everybody a concept of what that means. So next meeting, you'll be signing a warrant for $2.1 million to go to the school. We essentially have, it's in here,
It's in here.
essentially have in our operating account, we essentially have 3.1 million to get us through till September. So just understand, and out of that, what essentially is $1 million left, understand what that is made up of. That is made up of a $450,000 equipment fund. and that is made up of essentially a $250,000 highway fund surplus. So it's not all just cash that we've got kicking around. Usually at the end of your second, collection is when you're flusher than normal. So just everybody understands, what this means for, things. We do have a separate account with all the smaller trust funds, but, understand that, we don't necessarily want to, just understand what those are for. Yeah.
I know you mentioned the number of delinquent taxpayers, but did you mention a value?
500,000, yeah, I think I put it up there, 500,000, just over 500,000.
We've collected 60,000 of it so far in 2 weeks.
So some of it is very much people just trickling in after the fact, but this is just, I was talking to Kevin O'Toole today, the guy that will do our next tax sale, did our last one, that's a high number.
Last year was 349,000.
Wow, what a big, huge difference, my God.
And has the dust settled after that whole automated clearinghouse sort of change that?
I only had one pushback. They're in Florida, and their son opened the mail for them finally, and they thought they were supposed to set it up, and he wasn't supposed to set it up. And I said, well, I think you understood the letter wrong, and he gave me some pushback. But I said, you bring me the letter, show me where I said to set it up, and we'll talk about it. But as far as I'm concerned, you still owe he paid the delinquency at this point, but
Okay.
I'm sure there's going to be more discussion. I'm sure you saw listserv for the gentleman that was upset about having to pay the 8%.
I'm not on the listserv.
I'm gonna start calling it hate, sir.
I'm not on the listserv.
Yeah, he
Okay,
caught up. He was,
I'll send you.
No, no, that's why I'm not on the listserv.
he wasn't happy with the 8%. He thought it was a per annum outrageous interest rate, and I said it's not an interest rate; it's a late fee.
Yeah.
For being late.
Yeah, and it was nice that a number of our fellow
Yes.
citizens responded.
They
Very
did. They
positive.
did very nice. So yeah, they sure did. Absolutely.
All right, so what's the next move on these, I forgot how many people you said, 180 people.
So March 1st, we'll be sending out 180 letters. But then there'll be interest tacked on also.
Oh, my God.
So we're looking at a tax sale for probably May. For the next 20, we have 20 high delinquent folks that will, that seemed to move things along a little bit quicker last fall, kind of, brought that, we had our delinquencies down to about 100,000 at one point, which was the best I think we've been for a little bit now. Obviously we've expanded here. So again, we'll, kind of put the word out on the delinquent side of things.
Have any of these people reached out to you?
Oh, a few have. They've come in. I can't believe it. A lot of people said, I can't believe I missed it. Don't you send out a notice? I said, no, we don't. You have 2 coupons on your tax bill that we sent you in August. I mean, it costs $600 if we send out postcards to everybody. It's a reminder.
Do you mean has anyone reached out to you as far as a payment plan, or is that what you mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So there has been a couple that have reached out, and the notices will go back out to, the notices will go out starting March 1st. So the 30 individuals or so that have been receiving them, that will be nothing new. But the 130 other ones,
Yeah.
that will be new to them.
And that notice will say what,
The notice is,
what's the deadline?
it basically says you're not delinquent, please pay or come see the delinquent tax collector to set up a payment plan. And if, I forget what the language is that states that you could potentially go to a tax sale. And then it's got the amount that they owe, and then on this particular letter, it would have the interest and penalty calculated in. If they're a multiple year person, then He's got the multiple years of the delinquent. Got it, you know, and I sign it.
So is there some reason what, that you can perceive or guess at why these are so much delinquent?
I am going to hazard a guess. I think that Hartland has always been a little lax on the delinquencies. You know, so I think that that's one reason. You know, obviously we are not. You know, we're last in line.
Yeah.
You're the town.
Yeah.
You're the last in line. So I think that that is part of that, and I think this goes back many, you know, Doug and I were looking at an annual report from 1957, and it had delinquencies listed in there. This has been a problem for a fair amount of time.
Some of the same names.
So this is certainly is a thing, and then I do think you know, I think that plays a big part in that.
So I heard that, this may be some kind of rumor, but West Windsor didn't have tax delinquencies because their constable would go to people's homes and say, you need to pay. Has anybody ever heard that?
No.
No? You never heard that? You must have heard it. No?
No, I don't think
So I
so.
was to some homes in West Windsor when I was helping Zach Ralph canvass and with his campaign, and I can't. There's a lot of disparity, as there is in Hartland. There's a lot of disparity of incomes in West Windsor, so I can't believe it.
That everybody paid? Mm. And Dave,
Yeah.
to put this in perspective, other towns, they must have had tax delinquencies. Is this unusually high? And I know it's unusually high for Hartland, but other towns, really?
It's a high number.
Mm.
It's a high number.
Is there a more common percentage of taxpayers that are usually delinquent, like statewide?
That I can't answer.
Yeah.
I mean, 10% of your property owners delinquent is a fairly high number. Now, some of that's just people not rushing to get here. You know, but you know, the true delinquencies, the number that we had, you know, so we started with 20 at the last tax sale. I'm going to start with 20 for this tax sale. You know, so that's just 40 that are serious delinquencies.
Mhm,
You know, I think that that's a high number as well.
Yeah, there's some very interesting recent studies that Twin Pine Housing and a consultant that we use, I believe out of Woodstock, have looked at the Woodstock, Bridgewater, Hartford communities, and you know, there's income statistics in there, types of dwelling, and it's very telling what Hartland, how the Hartland makeup is. So I could send that reference to people if people want to sort of dive into it.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
So,
Dave, is it possible that you should be looking at 30 instead of 20?
You won't take 30.
Okay.
It's just too many to
But we could do it again. We don't have to wait.
we can't do them, Mary asked us, so we can't do them rapid fire. They're just too,
There's a lot of prep, right?
there's a lot of work that goes into this.
Mm.
You know, there's a whole legal process, a whole, you know, timeline that's got to follow and stuff like that. So, you know, at best, you know, twice a year is
Is the best we
a
can
pretty high number
Yeah.
to be doing.
Because I really think we're doing citizens a disservice by not being tough on taxes. I mean, we're getting them into, as you know, we're getting people into worse trouble by letting them get away with it.
How many actually went into sale? 3?
So they do come to the table or get resolved in kind of one way or the other.
Yeah, that's why I wondered why we couldn't shoot for a bit bigger number, knowing that most of them are gonna come forward without any legal action.
He doesn't want a number I haven't. You
Okay,
gotta do the,
that's it.
gotta do title searches and all other kinds of stuff.
Well, hopefully the March 1st letter would
Yeah,
impress some people.
yeah, maybe a threat of big trouble.
What do we do about cash flow if, you know?
So ultimately, I think we're not, I think that if we stay somewhat stable, the one hiccup I have in my head is the 225,000 we may drop on paving come May, but other than that, if we maintain some stable expenses and stick to payroll and stuff like that, we kind of know some of the other stuff coming in. We should be able to get to, and it's about the same situation, but just, generally here, was floating us, if we didn't have the equipment fund and the surplus on the highway, be totally different story. But just know that that's kind of that's what's taking the place of that $500,000.
Right.
So there is, when you hear these numbers, please understand, what that means for the town and how we operate. And, 180 people just deciding to come in 3 months later, is problem. That is very much why that penalty is there. It's like, no, we need money to operate. We have bills to pay. You have bills to pay. We have bills to pay. It is meaningful,
Well, I think that became abundantly clear to me during that last grievance, or whatever it was. at the time.
Abatement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were clearly the last person to be paid. It was just not a priority. So, I don't know how often that's the case, but
Well, the big credit card bills, it makes more sense to pay credit card and forget the taxes.
mhm.
So it doesn't, it's not a good thing. Well, I think your 10 minutes is up. Not your fault. Okay. Everybody happy with the more questions? Okay, let's move on to the.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks
very
a lot,
much,
Martin.
Martin. That was very clear. Road and bridge standards.
So pretty straightforward.
Let's sign it.
Do
Do we need to sign it, or do you just sign it?
No, we actually need you guys to sign
Yeah.
this.
Oh, you're back. Alright.
It'll get better. Been driving an awful lot. Sitting an awful lot.
Mhm. What are you doing? Fuel?
You. Of course, I get up early to make it to these meetings.
What?
I get up early to make it to the meeting
Get up early.
in the morning
To get done early.
to get done early.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
Is there two there?
What's that?
You can have that if you like. Was there two to sign, Dave, or just were they both one?
I don't know, sign this.
Just one. Second one is just a discussion. So no, the annual certificate, it's all one.
All right.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so the next item here, I think I'd asked Dave to put this back on, and this was state aid to, for municipal roads. It has to do with that letter we got last meeting about, from the town of Stratford and Waterbury, about asking the state to consider a 3-cent increase in the gas tax so that they could afford to aid the towns a bit more for road maintenance. I think it's things that I read that the state, things in the newspaper that I don't think there's no foggy chance in
Yeah, that's what I
where
read too.
they're gonna raise the gas tax, but that doesn't mean we couldn't join in on their request for, who knows, another year. I don't know whether you wanna do it or not. It seemed,
Well, if I recall correctly, that the letter was specifically asking for an increase in the gasoline tax to be returned. So if a letter would not necessarily say that, but say that we need additional revenue for the roads, ideal for that. I mean, we have a governor that's saying no to a carbon tax, and if I understood the Valley News article today, it was pretty clear the legislatures weren't going to.
no, the government is not interested in the gas tax, and whoever is in charge of bringing this possibility out of committee says no, there's no possibility that it would pass. I'm not even going to bring it out of committee. So there's nothing going to happen. That's the way I read it.
There's no guarantee that they would just go back, that money would be used to fund roads.
Could go to a different town.
Well, they
They did want to guarantee it.
did?
Yeah, they did want to make it for municipal.
Oh,
They
okay.
thought it was going to raise $10 million. But
I just, as we're on the board here, this just makes it harder for, people already go over to New Hampshire to buy their gas,
Yeah. I guess I don't find that to be a very good excuse, but it does happen.
How much was the increase gonna be?
3 cents. 3 cents.
3?
I thought it was 4.
No, it was 3.
Okay.
No, I may be wrong. I was thinking 3.
I don't know. I guess it'd be 4 as long as it really was ironclad, guaranteed that it was gonna go back, into road maintenance. Because we certainly need infrastructure improvement. So,
Just worried about our role model right now down in Washington. What Trump's doing with plucking money from.
oh, yes, that's the horror of that, yeah.
Yeah, it's too bad that it's unfortunate that it's not going to happen. The gas tax ought to be a national thing. I mean, it ought to be federal.
there is federal.
I know there is, but I mean, that's the one
Oh,
that raised.
yeah.
Oh, that would solve the cross-border thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be good.
And it's unfortunate that New Hampshire sees no reason to have to cooperate with Vermont on anything.
They're just jealous of us.
So, that's how it is.
Mhm.
On the other side, we have a lake. Which is helpful.
Mm. Right. So what are you asking?
Well, I don't know. I guess I would be in favor of endorsing the proposal, whatever it takes.
But what's the point if
We missed the boat, I think.
we already
No, for
know?
just so that the state will understand that we would much appreciate more help. More state aid from state to towns. It's what happens is in the school thing is usually the big one, where the state doesn't have enough money. They pass the burden on to the town, property taxes go up. And this is the same thing. If we can't, if you want us to fix the roads, you gotta do this, gotta do that. How are we gonna pay for it? Well, you're just gonna raise the property taxes.
Mhm.
And that's, so we're asking for something. If we have a different source of money, that isn't property taxes.
What do you think, Martha?
It sounds like a good idea. I think, like Matt says, it's nothing's gonna happen immediately.
Right.
But it would send a message.
I don't know. I don't know. Lost it. Forgot somewhere.
What, Gordon?
I said, I don't know what happened to the letter.
Yeah, I don't get mine either.
I left it home somewhere.
You want a copy?
Well,
Go fetch one.
I don't know whether it was that much, whether we have the enthusiasm for doing it or not. I don't know. I can't read it. I can't tell.
Yeah, I mean, I just, 4 cents is an awful lot, and
I think it's 3.
okay, well, 3.5.
How do you feel about 3.5?
It's a lot.
Uh,
You know, I don't know. And I was especially kind of piqued because I drive a diesel, and the diesel is taxed more both at the state level and at the federal
Is it?
level.
Oh.
So I didn't know that until today's article.
Oh. Well,
That's because it's trucks. I know I can pay past now.
Well, theoretically, I go a lot further. So
Trucks have. Do the gas tax, it's voters. Say,
yeah.
car represents a voter.
I don't know, what would, so this letter would go to the state or back to Stratford? It goes to the state.
Maybe it goes to me. You know, remember?
I think the folks from, I think we'd send it to the folks that were wanted it, or to whoever they recommended, whether it be to our representatives or to the LCT or some central place that was accumulating these. We'd have to give them a call. But it was a lobbying effort on behalf of the towns to make this happen.
I kind of after the door's already shut, makes us look uninformed, I guess.
Well, for another year coming.
We're asking opinions. If we feel that this letter would signify that we are concerned about funding levels coming back on the roads in general, then we should send it along.
With the caveat, we know it's too late this year, or there's not the interest in it, political will, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, if I understood, I think whoever wrote the article today sort of signified that the bill was dead.
Yeah.
Well, not even a bill, but this is just
Maybe it would make more sense to wait until it became got actually out of mothballs, so to speak. At a different time, and whether we would be informed to do it timely or not.
Yeah, certainly the irony sits in my mind that here I am talking about studying our roads and knowing that it's going to have a financial impact. And I'm kind of like, oh, I don't want to pay 4 more cents for 3 cents. I'm very aware of that.
Mm.
So we'll wait.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I wait? So that's that. Manager's notes.
Just quickly, Zach is with us. John, we picked up, kind of rounds out that crew. John, again, just to be clear, Bob, maybe just to clarify for you. John is doing essentially what the building, what it used to do, which is a lot of the sidewalks and stuff here. Hopefully you all received the town report mailer
Yes.
at this point in time. That did go out. And the town report is due to come out possibly by Friday, if not, I believe by Monday. So you'll see the town report hitting the shelves of Mike's and BG's and the town building here, North Hartland, and the library, I think is the one other spot. Go there to school as well? Okay. We talked a little bit about the 21 house. More on the highway. As of today, we are 2 trucks down. Dan's, what used to be Dan's, it is now BJ's truck. It's actually only 3 years old. It's the Western Star. That went in late last week. We had one go down and get towed away this morning. That is Doug's old truck, which is now being driven by Bill. And the holder, the sidewalk plow, is also down as well. So we're looking for something to, a tractor that's available to us via a lease or something to that effect.
But is that gonna get fixed?
It is, but that's not something they ship to, Muniers and they ship it back 2 days later. It's kind of a special breed, but it will get fixed, but it's not something that can be done in a week. We'll need to find something to replace it in the short term.
That's it.
Okay. That is yet to be identified, but we're looking into it. Fire marshal did come today, just real quickly. This room here, capacity is 49. The main floor, just above us, capacity is 200, and the balcony has a capacity of 49. It was, I would say, beyond a recommendation that we get a fire alarm system put in this building. It was strongly, I won't say strongly, it was nicely told to me that that's what we need to do.
What's the alarm that's over? So those emergency lights or just?
I don't know, actually.
I say we get some right down in Abishans. They go up on the ceiling, and when the smoke hits them, they go beep, beep, beep.
That's not a good solution.
It's a fantastic solution. It's better than nothing.
Isn't it supposed to be connected with the fire department or something? Or no, that's not what he's saying.
Interconnected as well, but something a little bit more than that, but there was something that could be put in that wasn't quite
There's got to be something
as
reasonable.
extravagant, that wasn't going to bust down the house. He stopped short of saying a sprinkler system, which is good. I did meet with from Wes Johnson from Fort Brook Road. I did just kind of have a sit down with him, kind of let him know that we are indeed looking at the specs. He should read those and analyze this whole road as to how those fit in with the specs and determine whether that's still, feasible. I thought it was a pretty decent discussion, but at the end of the day, he does need to come back to me and state that he does not want to proceed. He sent us a formal letter stating that he'd like us to consider that, so that is, you know, a step on his part. He needs to communicate with me somehow as to whether he still would like to consider it or not. He said he would go back and talk to the other residents on Fort Brook Road and come back to me. Tax sale in the spring, summer, talked about that. I did go to an emergency management meeting with John Sanders last week. Just knowing that, one, we have a new, still not all that difficult emergency operations plan that we need to put together. But the interesting thing on that is that the new plan gets into I forget the terminology for it, emergency response center, an EOC, emergency, I forget what the O is for. We have a radio. Our EOC is the fire department. There is a radio over there. We need to have a little bit more of a formal process to make sure that we can access highway, you know, fire, first response, and surrounding towns from there. I understand that maybe this has come up in the past, but the fire department and highway department should consider a generator to make sure that we can operate in case of emergency. It did hit me pretty hard that if we had a storm of which we needed to plow and we lost electricity, our ability to access the diesel fuel kind of goes away. So just something to, it's not anything immediate, it's not, you know, I'm not throwing it at you kind of like, you know, but it's just something I'm really working on getting John and Alan Beebe, who's the first response, and Bill kind of understanding that, you know, the reaction's kind of, you know, we're a small town, you know, we don't need that type of stuff, you know, but we do need to have a framework in place to be able to, you know, understand and to delegate some town responsibilities and be able to communicate with regionally at the same time. It doesn't need to be extravagant, we just need to do that, but it's just a step I've taken with John to kind of bring him into the fold, that's all.
So you're talking like a $5,000 generator?
You're ahead of the ball, you're ahead of the curve. I'm just saying that, you know, these are just things that as I speak with, you know, I'm just letting you know that, you know, I'm getting John and Alan and Bill where, you know, it's been basically, yeah, you know, we're small, we'll shoot from the hip. You know, something happens, we get together and talk, that's great. We need something a little bit more formal than that, something that we have, you know, we can access. And somebody more than I knows where the emergency operations plan is. You know, just, you know, we haven't really operated, you know, in that respect, and I'm just trying to introduce them, you know, to that. You know, John has connected me now. You know, I used to be able to just get the scanner for the highway. I now get fire, Windsor Fire, you know, first response, so I have a little bit better idea as to what's going on. It's just some of these things that, you know, since I am kind of the emergency coordinator, I should at least kind of be privy to what's going on. And, you know, I spend weekends with my daughter, you know, who's picking up slack if I'm gone. You know, that should be probably John, but that's never been formalized. So just some steps that we need to kind of think about. So I did that last week with John. I introduced him to something he already kind of knew, but just one of those things.
Gordon, I have two quick things. If there's, I'm not sure about correspondence. As everyone knows, groups in town like Aiken and Hartland have been looking at assisted living and affordable housing. And I attended the Twin Pines presentation last week, which was very kind of, it was an okay presentation. It could have been a lot better, but the gist was there. I'm going to attend a meeting at Vital Communities on Friday. And at that meeting, Chuck Fenton is going to come with me, and we're going to hear what Thetford did in the affordable housing and assisted living, and why it didn't work. So, I mean, I don't see us having a role in it, but as I said, there's a lot of people in Hartland that are, a lot of different groups that are looking at it, so I'm trying to just keep abreast of that. And the second question, the second point is really a question on my part, is I think, again, many of us have been hearing bits and pieces from the listers as they begin to wrap up, and I think just finished one of the phases recently. Well, anyway, I'm hoping that they did. And I don't know if we should talk about having a building permit beyond a driveway permit, or is that something the planning commission should wrestle with? But I'm surprised at the number of properties that the listers are finding that they hadn't known that someone was building. So again, just something in the future that maybe we can wrestle with.
It's probably a planning commission search initiative.
Mm-hmm.
And might be something that Doug's going to talk about when
That's what I'm wondering. That's why I asked it as a
talks to
question.
the
Did
town. I
people
don't know whether
wrap
he's
up?
on.
It's actually not really in Doug's purview. I mean, it is, I think it's important for us to realize what he's bringing to us, the fact that there's that much out there. I mean, I wouldn't expect the impetus for a building permit to, I think that what's important for the listers is that they're bringing something to us. I think that, I think it could originate either spot. Planning commission, would make sense, or certainly, from an ordinance perspective with this one.
Anything like that? No. You must have something.
I already spoke my piece.
Forgot already.
Okay, guess we're all done then.